But going to Webster Tarpley, it was Tarpley several months ago when the Libyan rebellion began that wrote the articles at tarpley.net. We posted them at Infowars.com. That broke down how the State Department was publicly funding these al-Qaeda groups. Even the LA Times 2 days ago admitted NATO, al-Qaeda, Taliban behind uprising. They're now Orwellian terms saying it's peaceful bombs they're dropping. It's humanitarian. They're actually saying the ground troops are going to be humanitarian force with weapons who are going to go out and enter the cities Gaddafi's in. And if he fights back, then they're going to have to bring in a larger ground force. So we've actually entered 1984. And there's a lot of mainstream news articles now admitting that the full ground invasion is on, with the UN ordering the United States to contribute troops, the Marine Corps ships that are already there, more getting into place. So Webster Tarpley, a huge development. Over a month ago, you said the Saudis are being double-crossed. The globalists are devaluing the dollar. This is a system to overthrow the entire Middle East. Now the Saudis, as you said months ago, you said this last year, are running to the Russians, running to the Chinese. I mean, it's incredible, Dr. Tarpley of history and also an economist, that you broke all this down. Now it's all evident there. What does this signify? And there's also some mainstream articles today that the Arab Spring is not going completely well for the globalist.
Precisely. The basic idea is that you had all of these countries, be it Libya, be it Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, and others, lots and lots of countries in the empire that were trying to get out from under this suffocating U.S., British, IMF domination. And in order to do that, they were playing the Russian card, the China card, the Iranian card, or trying to build themselves up.
The BRICS card.
BRICS is not quite going to do it because it's a little bit heterogeneous. But yes, something like that. Individually, the BRICS, although the BRICS as an entity is not really coherent. But specifically now, the news is this. Saudi Arabia, of course, is a huge target of this. Ultimately, you might say Saudi Arabia is the main target after Egypt.
They had to get Egypt out of the way to go into Libya to bring the weapons in. You said months ago Mubarak wasn't playing ball on that. Then Saudi Arabia, then Iran. It's the whole deal.
Right. Now, here's what we've got, is an attempt by the Saudis to defend themselves, to maintain their national independence, and to stop this tremendous CIA intervention and National Endowment for Democracy intervention into their internal affairs. At the end of March, we have Prince Bandar, the head of the National Security Council, and as far as I can see, the dominant personality of the whole regime of the royal family, going to Pakistan and meeting with the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Gilani, but I'm sure also with the Pakistani Army and the ISI. And the Washington Post has had a couple of freak-out articles about this, one by Martin Indyk, the former U.S. ambassador to Israel. This is a guy who, remember, is an Australian, nationalized here, very, very strange guy. The idea is that Prince Bandar has arranged that if the U.S. starts a color revolution inside the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the Pakistanis will send a division or more of troops to put it down. There is a tradition for this in the 1970s, 1980s at various times. The Saudis kept a division of Pakistani troops inside Saudi Arabia for security, to put down any eventual rebellions. And those were the people, I think, that went into the holy places during the Hajj in 1978-79 when there were some violent incidents there. But you can see the idea that Bandar is turning to an alliance with Pakistan in order to defend Saudi Arabia against the U.S. is a kind of strategic revolution. Up to now, Saudi Arabia has relied on the United States for security, but now the people around Bandar see, obviously, that Obama is the main threat, that the U.S. regime, the CIA, the NED, are the main threat to the internal security of Saudi Arabia, so they're looking for an option. Now, once you say Pakistan, of course, you're also saying nuclear weapons. You can say in a certain way, it's quite possible that Bandar has arranged that Saudi Arabia is now under the Pakistani nuclear umbrella. This is quite a new thing in world affairs. These are two countries, Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, who have been under the U.S. yoke, totally dominated by the U.S., bombed in the case of Pakistan, who are trying to make a jailbreak.
And because of globalist treachery, they were fully under the Anglo-American system, but because of the attempted overthrows and assassinations Benazir Bhutto and others, and I've had the former head of Pakistani intelligence on confirming this. Hamid Gul, folks, doesn't get any more high-powered out of Pakistan. He concurs with what Dr. Tarpley is saying. They now know they've been double-crossed. The Saudis, and again, you said this last year. I'm blown away, Tarpley, by your foresight. They now admit they're being double-crossed. Same thing 6 months ago said by our oil company connections through Lindsey Williams. And so the globalists were attempting, through the Rand Corporation Brzezinski model, for a global destabilization from North Africa, Middle East, into Central Asia as a pretext to move giant forces in to then menace China and Russia. I mean, this is an incredibly bold move.
Actually, the first attempt of Bandar, the first thing that at least I learned about, was in July of 2009. I was on your program to call attention to the fact that Bandar was playing the Russian card. He had made numerous visits to Russia. He had been meeting with Putin. They were talking about Russian military assistance also there for Saudi Arabia. So that goes back almost 2 years, and in reality more, most likely. Since then, there was a period of about a year when Bandar disappeared from view, and we weren't exactly sure what had happened to him. But now the word in various publications is Bandar is back, and I have to remind people, you may still have the idea that Bandar is this guy who's basically a slave of George Bush the Younger, Bandar Bush, close friend of the Bush family. This is ultimately all irrelevant.
He's a survivor, and now it's even in Reuters that the Saudis are saying they're being double-crossed. So he leaves house arrest. He's now back.
Right, and the house arrest, we have to see whether that was really house arrest or not. But the idea now is that if the U.S. starts this color revolution, that there will be Pakistani assistance. Now, you look at how the U.S. is attacking Saudi Arabia. One way is through Yemen. That entire thing in Yemen is basically a sideshow. The target of everything that happens in Yemen is Saudi Arabia. If you have the split up of Yemen, above all, the emergence of Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, AQAP, led by Shiri, a Guantanamo 6-year alumnus brought in by the United States to run it, and of course our dear friend Al-Laki, the CIA lackey, born in New Mexico, shipped over, obvious double agent. Those two guys, one from Guantanamo and one from the intelligence community, are running Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. So that's one source of a huge destabilization for Saudi Arabia.
And now that's even admitted in the LA Times and Washington Post. They're not even denying this brazenly. They think we're so done. They say bombs are humanitarian, ground troops are humanitarian. Al-Qaeda is bad when we say, good when we say, simultaneously. I mean, do you think they can really sell this to people?
Well, they're trying hard. I just wanted to mention the other angle is Bahrain. Now, Bahrain is this island, right? It's one of these little emirates along what amounts to the coast of Saudi Arabia, the Gulf Coast, the Persian Gulf, Arabian Gulf coast of Saudi Arabia. Now, there we have the Saudi troops have intervened in support of the Sunni royal family against the Shiite protesters. This is obviously intended it's not really a destabilization of Bahrain because the Fifth Fleet base is there. There is an angle of putting pressure on the royal family because they don't want the base to be used for a war with Iran.
But Webster, I want to be clear. It's a soft underbelly. I want to be clear, and it's spread the contagion to Saudi Arabia. I can't stand the corrupt Saudis put in by British intel 100-plus years ago. I can't stand Gaddafi. The point is, why are the globalists moving against their allies, their old enemies? They now admit, it's all over the news, that they are destabilizing, and the Saudis respond by saying, we're going to slash oil production, and yes, we're 2 days after they met with Gates and tried to make a deal, the Secretary of Defense, they did run to Russia and China. And so this could be a big miscalculation by the Anglo-American globalist.
It could. The idea, I think, is that these countries are targeted not because of their internal regimes. And, of course, the Saudi internal regime is quite distasteful, to put it mildly. But the main issue is that they're attempting to rebel against Anglo-American domination. I think globalism is not exactly the right term. This is U.S.-British imperialism. That's all it ever was. Globalism implies that there's a place at the table for Russia or China and so forth, and there's not. Those countries are all targeted. They're all ultimately on the receiving end of color revolutions.
Well, Webster, we're going to